Unlocking True Freedom After 60, How to Turn Aging into the Best Time of Your Life. Hello my old friends. Have you ever wondered, if not now, then when is the time to live fully? We have gone through so many years of rushing, busy worrying about family, work, everything besides ourselves. And then one day, when our hair has turned a little gray, when our children have grown up, when the alarm clock is no longer something we hate every morning, then a very strange feeling creeps into our minds. Am I truly free? Old age for many people is a turning point, sometimes making people hesitate, sometimes making them afraid of change. But it is also that turning point, if we know how to look back, that can be the freest and most brilliant period of life. Freedom here is not just not having to work 8 hours a day. It is freedom in thinking, freedom in choosing how to live, freedom to do the things you have always wanted but never had enough time or courage to do. We often hear people say, old age is a time to rest. But resting does not mean lying in one place and counting the time. There is a big difference between living and simply being alive. But to truly live, to live meaningfully, to live joyfully, one must have a clear awareness that old age is not the end, but a second chance. A new sky where one can paint with any color one wants. I remember once sitting in a small park in San Diego, seeing an old man in his 70s diligently writing something in a small notebook. I asked curiously, he smiled gently and said, "I am learning Italian. Next year I want to go to Rome. And to go to Rome, I must at least know how to ask for directions, right?" At that time, I was really moved. Because I realized that true freedom does not come from age, but from spirit. So how can we, people who have passed more than half of our lives, live freely like that? Not all of us want to learn Italian or fly to Europe. But everyone can do something that makes us feel alive again. And to do that, the first thing is to look back and remove the invisible shackles that bind us every day. One of those shackles is the fear of old age. It sounds simple, but in fact this fear greatly affects the way we live. Some people are afraid of their health getting worse, so they do not dare to go far. Some people are afraid of being outdated, so they do not dare to use new technology. Some people are afraid of being judged, so they do not dare to do anything unusual like learning to dance, traveling alone, or even dating again. But think about it this way, if you don't do what you want now, when will you? We can't turn back time, but we can choose to live differently from now on. And the amazing thing is, the human brain is still capable of learning, adapting, and growing, even in our 70s and 80s. Scientists at Harvard University have shown that older people can still form new neural connections if they are constantly exposed to new information, new environments, and new experiences. That means that instead of letting old age shrink us, we can completely expand our world more than ever. So start with the simplest thing. Choose something you've always wanted to do but haven't done. Maybe it's learning guitar. Maybe it's practicing yoga. Maybe it's writing a memoir. Or simply getting out of the house every morning and walking around the park near you. As long as it makes you feel alive, not living to wait, but living to enjoy. I know, many of us are still bound by the feeling of being useless after retirement. That no one needs us anymore, no one relies on us anymore, there is no reason to wake up early anymore. But my friend, usefulness does not necessarily have to be tied to work or responsibility. Sometimes, your peaceful and positive presence is a gift in itself. Do you know that there are grandchildren who feel that the day is worth living just by listening to their grandmother tell stories every afternoon? There is an uncle living in Portland, Oregon, 76 years old. After retiring, he started a free cooking class in the neighborhood. He said, "I don't teach to make money, I teach to have people to eat with." Just one sentence that made me think forever. That is freedom, not being bound by a reason, just doing it because I want to. Every week, he bought ingredients, prepared a simple menu, and cooked with a few people in the neighborhood. Gradually, the class became a gathering place where no one felt alone, and everyone felt like they were living a useful life. And that's the second point I want to make. Old age is a great time to reconnect, not only with others but also with ourselves. Over the years, we may have lived too fast, too hastily, and lost the relationships we once cherished. Now is the time to call an old friend, write a handwritten letter to a loved one, or simply sit down and chat with a neighbor on the porch. Have you noticed that the older we get, the more we crave peace and closeness? It doesn't have to be a big party. It doesn't have to be too crowded. Sometimes just a cup of afternoon tea with an old friend, a tight hug with your children and grandchildren, or a heartfelt conversation with yourself is enough to make you feel fulfilled. In fact, the older we get, the more we are able to love more deeply. Because we understand the value of time. We know that a timely apology, a sympathetic look, a gentle handshake, sometimes more precious than many flowery words. And when we live with that gentleness, we will also attract to ourselves gentle, warm things like that. Another point that I believe everyone should think about, this is the stage where we can start to choose our way of life again, no longer following a pattern, but following the rhythm of our hearts. Who said that at 70 years old, we cannot wear floral dresses, wear red shoes, learn Zumba, or go mountain climbing? Who said that when we are old, we have to live simply, less colorful, less dreamy? Who set those rules? And why should we follow them if they make us feel constrained? Remember an 85-year-old woman in California who appeared on television with bright pink hair and a bright orange flared dress. When asked why she chose this style, she just smiled and said, "Because I like it. I live for myself." And I think that was the most memorable quote I ever heard that year. Finally, when it comes to freedom, don't forget one important thing. Freedom is also forgiving yourself. Forgiving yourself for past mistakes. Forgiving yourself for the dreams you haven't had time to fulfill. Forgiving yourself for the things you regret. We can't go back and start over, but we can start today with an open mind, with gratitude and tolerance. And when we forgive ourselves, we will also be gentler with others. We will no longer be strict with our children and grandchildren, no longer bitter about the past. We simply live fully, peacefully, and freely as if there were no barriers. Now that we have touched that feeling, the feeling of freedom in our own old age, let's continue this journey, because there are many interesting things waiting for us to discover. Let's move on to the next part. Once we have felt a sense of freedom that can flourish in our old age, it is time to go deeper, not just ideas or emotions, but concrete, practical steps that can be started today to make life more open and proactive. Because freedom, if not nurtured by action, is just an unfulfilled dream. One thing that I believe everyone will agree on is that health is the root of freedom. Without health, all dreams become a burden. But we also know very well that, after the age of 60, health is no longer the same as before. The body begins to change, eating less but still gaining weight, sleeping enough but still tired. Bones and joints occasionally remind us with creaking sounds every morning when we wake up. But that does not mean we are helpless. In fact, at this age, we can completely improve our health, just starting with the smallest things. I know a friend named George who lives in Arizona. He was a civil engineer, retired at 62 with a few chronic diseases, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, and chronic knee pain. At first, George thought that it's normal to be old, so he just took his medicine regularly and let his body slow down every day. But then one day, when he climbed the stairs to the second floor and found himself sitting and panting for nearly 5 minutes, he decided to change. He started walking every morning, just 10 minutes at first. Then increased to 20, then 30. He started to practice the habit of eating oatmeal for breakfast instead of white bread, drinking more water than coffee, and after a year the miracle happened. His blood sugar level decreased significantly. His blood pressure stabilized, and he said a sentence that I will always remember: "I feel like I'm 50 again, not because my body is younger, but because I control it." Freedom in aging begins with not letting your body control you, but learning to work with it. It doesn't have to involve running, lifting weights, or dieting. Just choosing one healthy activity each day, like taking a walk after dinner, meditating for 10 minutes in the morning, eating more vegetables, or getting up and moving after sitting for too long, is enough to let your body know that you're on its side. And this isn't just a personal feeling, it's backed by science. Research from the National Institute on Aging shows that older adults who maintain light to moderate physical activity, like walking, gardening, or aerobics, are more likely to recover from illness, maintain better cognitive function, and have a lower risk of depression. This means that every gentle step every day can be the building block for a free life in old age, where we no longer depend on medicine, nurses, or a dense doctor's schedule. Next, there is another factor that is equally important, sometimes even deciding the mood of a day, that is the living space. Old age is the time when we should choose to live in a place that makes us feel safe, comfortable, and able to be ourselves. It does not have to be a riverside villa or a luxury apartment, but a space that is quiet enough to hear the birds every morning, close enough to nature to be able to step outside and breathe without hearing the honking of car horns, warm enough that sitting alone does not feel lonely. I once visited an old lady named Margaret in the state of Vermont. She lives in a small house of only about 50 square meters, but the interior is very delicately decorated. The walls are full of paintings by her children and grandchildren, the bookshelves are neat, the kitchen corner always smells of baked goods, and the large windows are always open to welcome the sunlight. She said, "People think that old age is the time when you need to be taken care of, but I think that as long as you take good care of yourself, you are happy." That sentence made me realize that the living space is not just a place to live, but also a reflection of the inner self. If your heart is messy, you do not accept the present, do not love yourself, then the house, no matter how spacious or beautiful, will become empty. On the contrary, when you know how to cherish each item, each meal, each moment, then the small room will also become your own world. An interesting study from the University of California found that seniors who lived in spaces with plants, natural light, and warm colors had significantly lower levels of cortisol, the stress hormone, than those who lived in environments with less vitality. So, if you're looking for ways to live more freely in your old age, try starting by cleaning up your space. Get rid of unwanted items, rearrange your reading nook, add a potted plant, or simply change your curtains to let in more sunlight. These small changes can do wonders for your mood every day. And then, after your health is taken care of and your living space is organized, the next important thing is curiosity. Yes, you heard right, curiosity is the door to freedom of the mind. Don't think that curiosity is for young people. It is curiosity, the desire to explore, the openness to new things that keep the soul from aging. An old man living in Denver, Colorado, once told me that after his wife passed away, he was almost indifferent to everything. But one day, he read a piece of news about a short story writing for seniors course at the community library. At first, he tried it for fun, but unexpectedly became fascinated. He started writing about wartime stories, the subsidy period, and even imaginary stories. Once a week, he went to class, read stories to each other, and then a group of young friends of the same age gradually became his second family. He said, "I never expected that at the age of 74, I would discover another version of myself." That is not unusual. In fact, the human brain has the ability to regenerate throughout life, something called neuroplasticity, and this ability is activated more strongly when we learn something new. Whether it's a dance, a language, a digital tool, or even how to cook a foreign dish. Curiosity makes us more alive, more proactive, and more free in our thinking. So, if today you find yourself feeling down and feeling like each day is the same, it might be time to rekindle your curiosity. Ask yourself, what else don't I know? What else have I wanted to do that I haven't done? What book have I wanted to read? What class have I wanted to take that I've been hesitant to take? Start with the smallest thing, because it's the smallest thing that will take you out of the boring cycle and open the door to mental freedom. And so, from health, from living space to curiosity, those things can turn old age into the most brilliant period. But there are still deeper factors related to emotions, to relationships, and to the meaning of life that we will delve deeper into in the next part. We will not stop here, because the journey to find true freedom has only just begun. Let's continue with me, my friend. After we have taken care of our health, living space, and curiosity in our minds, then perhaps you have also begun to feel something very important. Freedom in old age is not just about having time, having choices, or being able to proactively do what you like, but true freedom is when we live without being bound by fear. And if you pay a little attention, you will see that there is a very quiet, very silent fear that follows many people after the age of 60, that is the feeling of being forgotten, of being isolated from the life that is going on out there. Have you ever sat in a familiar house, looked out the window, saw the children in the neighborhood laughing and talking, the adults rushing to work, and you sat quietly with a cup of cold tea? Not sad. Not exactly lonely. But a little vague, as if life out there was running too fast, and you were left behind. That feeling has no name, but is familiar. It is like when you used to be part of an organization, a busy family, an environment with a lot of interaction, then suddenly when you reach retirement age, everything retreats, becomes silent, and you don't know where you belong anymore. That is why the next important thing in the journey of living freely in old age is connection, with others, with the community, with life outside. We are not born to live alone. We are creatures of connection, of dialogue, of shared emotions. And after the age of 60, this need does not decrease, but sometimes becomes deeper. I remember an old man in Seattle, named Raymond, once told me, "What makes me age the fastest is not illness, but the days when I have no one to talk to." That sentence haunted me for a long time. Because I understand that loneliness is not just an emotion, it directly affects mental and physical health. Studies from Brigham Young University have shown that chronic loneliness increases the risk of premature death by up to 26%. It affects the cardiovascular system, sleep, immune system, and even memory. So, if we want to truly live freely in old age, free from the fear of being forgotten, of being separated, the first thing we need to do is to take the initiative to reconnect. It doesn't have to be anything big. It can be as simple as making a phone call, sending a text message, stopping by an old friend's house, attending a community event, volunteering at the library or a senior class. Even small interactions can be the thread that connects us back to the flow of life. I know, sometimes it can be a little awkward. You might think, people are busy, and I'm old, maybe they'll find it annoying. But don't think like that. There are many people out there waiting for a nod, an invitation to coffee, an opening conversation. And when you take the initiative to make connections, you're not only helping yourself, but you're also helping others feel seen and cared for. A great way to build connections in old age is through giving. Do you remember the feeling when you helped someone? Whether it was giving a little advice, cooking a delicious meal, or simply listening to someone else's story without judging them. Those actions make us feel useful, still valuable. And the feeling of being useful, that is a huge part of freedom. Not being defined by age, not being considered a burden, but being someone who can still create a positive impact on the world around us. I know an old lady named Helen, who lives in San Diego. She is a former elementary school teacher, retired at 65. During the first 3 years after retirement, she lived quite a secluded life. But then, one day at the library, she saw a notice about the Reading to Children program organized by the local Parents Association. She signed up. At first, she only read books every Tuesday, then Thursday, then Saturday. Gradually, the children loved her, and the parents admired her too. She became the neighborhood's reading grandmother. Helen says she hasn't felt more alive since she turned 60. Freedom is when you stop waiting for life to find you, but you step out and proactively create value for others. You may not be as good at reading books as Helen, or writing, or teaching. But you have the most valuable thing, life experience. A life is never meaningless if we know how to use it to support others. Sharing a story, a lesson, a smile, all can be gifts. And when you have nurtured external connections, there is a more important connection that you need to return to, that is the relationship with yourself. Because sometimes, it is not others who abandon you, but you yourself who have quietly abandoned yourself for many years. We are so used to taking care of others, children, family, work, that when we are free, we are confused about who we are without those roles. I once asked a 68-year-old woman, if your children are all fine, without their mother taking care of them, do you think you are still an important person? She was silent for a long time. Then she said, probably not. I feel empty, useless. That answer was heartbreaking, but very true. Because if our whole life is defined by our roles, mother, wife, employee, helper, then when we no longer have those roles, we are lost. Therefore, the last step, and the most important, is to learn to love yourself again, for yourself, not for anyone else. Try asking, what used to make you happy when you didn't need anyone's recognition? It could be drawing, planting trees, writing a diary, sitting and watching the clouds, listening to classical music. Go back to those things. Don't be afraid that you are too young to start over. People learn to play the piano at 70, to take up photography at 75, to climb mountains at 80. Because happiness has no age, and inner freedom does not wait for the right time. When you take time for yourself, take care of your emotions, listen to your thoughts, respect your boundaries, you are allowing yourself to be yourself, fully. And only then, you are truly free. Not the freedom of young people full of ambition, but the freedom of those who have experienced, who have gone through storms, and now know what is real, what is enough, what is worth living. Dear friends, we cannot turn back time. But we can absolutely create a truly meaningful remaining life. Freedom is not in our wallets, not in the number of years left, but in how we choose to live each day. Choosing to take care of our bodies, choosing to renew our minds, choosing to connect, choosing to give, and most importantly, choosing to love ourselves. If you find something in this video that touches you, please leave a comment below. I always love to hear sincere sharing, even if it's just a simple sentence like, I see myself in that story. Share so we can see that we are not alone in this journey. And if you want to continue to accompany each other, to discover more meaningful things for old age, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. Not to increase the number, but so that we don't lose each other in this big world. I hope that when the screen turns off, you will stand up, smile, and start a small action, but it can be the first step to a journey of true freedom. Wishing you a happy, healthy, and fulfilling life at every age. Thank you for listening. Goodbye and see you in the next video.